Hi, everyone. So, unfortunately, I was called into a TIEP meeting, which is a special education meeting. I tried to get it covered by someone else, but I was not able to. So, unfortunately, you guys are watching this recording instead. So, when you are done watching the recording today, what I would like for you to do is give me a green check. And basically let me know that you are finished watching uh, everything that I'm going to be talking about today, and then also going ahead and looking over some of those assignments for this week, and then a preview of some assignments for next week. So, again, sorry, this is probably going to be a little on the long side, but it's going to be like if you were sitting in a session with me today. So, with that, news values is the first thing I want to make sure that you are very aware of. And so obviously there's activity resources you can look through. But as you're clicking through, the six news values that we are really going to be discussing in our class are timeliness, proximity, prominence, impact, conflict, and novelty. So in the class, there was a PowerPoint, or it's kind of like a slide show that you would have been able to kind of look through. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to chat with you for just a second about these six news values, because you are going to be using these news values throughout the entire course, up into the very last day of the semester. So if nothing else that you take away from today, that you really connect and become familiar with these news values that we are going to be using throughout the semester. So the first news value is timeliness. So basically, if something is to be considered newsworthy, it has to be kind of immediate or pretty timely. So the event, occurrence, or piece of information needs to have just happened. If it happened a long time ago, if it's history, not news, if it's a house fire that happened last night, it's that would be considered news. But if it happened 20 years ago, it's not news. So sometimes you'll hear like the saying, that's old news. It's not really something that is of interest to people. So people aren't really going to either read the article or they're really not going to pay attention. So timeliness is very important in journalism. Okay. Hold on one sec. All right, sorry about that. I hit the wrong thing. The next is proximity. So proximity means how close something is to you. So the closer that something is, the more likely that you're going to be interested or it's going to be relevant to you. So, for example, if you live like in the Dayton area and when the tornadoes hit in Dayton, that would be something that's really of interest to you, right? Or if you have family that lives in that area. But if you are from like Steubenville or Toledo or Columbus, something like that, those tornadoes may not have been that, or the news about the tornadoes may have not been as had much of interest to you. So proximity is very important. Obviously, if something happens in your school district or if something happens in your neighborhood, that's proximity. So what you want to look at is the closer something is, the greater likelihood it will be relevant to you. Thus, news in your community may not be considered news in another community. If there is a water main break that floods the road in your part of town, that's news to you, but not necessarily news people who live on the other side of town will be interested in. Okay, so that has to do with proximity. Prominence is the other one. So basically, prominence has to do with who's involved in the news. So if the President of the United States keeps his promise to his children to get a puppy, that is considered news and the media covers it. Why? Because the president is prominent. If your family gets a news puppy, it's not likely that it will make the 6 o'clock news, right? So prominence. So a lot of times movie stars, athletes, political figures, that's more prominent than some of the other things that we would be thinking of. Okay, so prominence is another news value. Impact is the fourth. So impact is basically how many people is this going to affect? So obviously if you're telling the story about fundraising for a little small uh, fundraiser that you did, um, that may not be have a huge impact. Excuse me. But something like Susan G. Komen breast cancer research that everyone knows about, that's going to have a larger impact. So it's if a cure for cancer is discovered, that would affect millions of people. That story would certainly be considered news, right? So how many people is the story going to impact? So that is another important factor. Conflict. There obviously is a lot of news value in conflict because people love conflict. It's just something that a lot of people in general are drawn to. We watch a lot of things on social media that have to do with conflict, on TV. So conflict is definitely a news value. So it refers to anything in which people, nations, companies, or sorts of entities are at odds with each other, right? So if you are in an argument with your best friend, obviously that's not going to be newsworthy. But if two nations are at war with each other, that obviously is going to affect lots of people. So that becomes newsworthy at that time. And the last one is novelty. So novelty as a criteria means information from the unusual. So if something is different or kind of pulls the audience, and it's going to be newsworthy. So if someone's having breakfast at the local diner and notice that his toast looks exactly like Elvis Presley's silhouette, the local media might be called in and they might shoot a video, right? But it's not necessarily going to change the world. However, novelty is for sure something that is reported on quite often in local and national news. We see it a lot on more so now in social media, especially if you come across things on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We do see a lot of like little novelty news reports, especially things that have to do with animals because they make us feel good. So we happen to see that a little bit more now. So with that, to do the assignments that you had to do this week, obviously you took a quiz, so that you should have already taken that 1.02 quiz. And then 1.03 is sorry, I'm looking for the PowerPoint to pull up. 1.03 is going to be a reporter's reflection. So what I'm going to do now for you is I am going to go over some of the assignments that and my computer just froze. Hold on one sec, sorry. Ah, sorry about that. My computer was freezing and it was not moving. Wasn't sure why. Okay, so the first thing that you were doing for the class, other than the quiz that you were taking and reading through the content, is going to be 1.03 journal reflection. So in the classroom, I actually posted a video. A student was having some trouble finding articles and things like that. And I clarified some things. So in the actual classroom, there is a video right above the assignment that says 1.03 help video. So if you're having trouble with that, I go into a little bit more explanation there. But for today's purposes, because I'm going to go through all of these assignments, I'm not going to go too deeply into them. If at any time you're having trouble, send me an email, let me know, and I can for sure get you a video, like a help video, or I can meet with you, whatever we need to do. Um, so the first thing for this assignment that I want to make sure that you're aware of is, other than the help video, is that when you come into 1.03, there are two websites that are located in the classroom, and I go over this in that help video, that you are able to utilize for this assignment. What I want you to understand is, yes, those are two great websites to use. You can Google search anything you need to for this class. So if you're like, man, this is really hard for me to find information because there's too much hunting and pecking, then that's okay. Google search it. I will tell you, part of being a journalist is investigation. So in this class, you are going to be searching a lot of information, and it's stuff you're not going to be able to find in 2 seconds. Like, you're going to have to dig at some things. So I'm just giving you a forewarning there, because that's part of the process of being a journalist. So we're giving you that process too. So what you're doing for this article, or for this assignment, and by the way, the journal itself, you are opening up a blank Word document for every assignment. For the journals. There's not like a journal that is attached. So when you go to create this assignment, there's not an attachment, like an assignment actually attached for you. You're just opening a blank Word document, and then a Word document, and then you are just typing on it and submitting it. So that's technically your journal. Okay, so just to clarify that. So for this, you're going to look at one of 4 presidents. So you can either choose Roosevelt, Kennedy, Ford, or Reagan. And then when you go into this, your journal, you are going to look for 3 very specific things. So you're going to look for the link for your journal that you found. So all I need is the HTTP link at the top. You just need to copy and paste that. So that's one. The second thing is, what news values were in the story. So proximity, was there timeliness, was there whatever else we covered, right? So all I need to see is a list of any news values that's in that story. So if there only happens to be 1, then that's okay. If there happens to be 2, then that's okay, right? So what you need to make sure that you're doing, however, is you have to find a story that has some news values in it, okay? So you're going to just tell me what the news values are. You're going to list them. Then the last thing that you're going to do is you are going to basically just write a sentence for each news value that you found, explaining how it meets the criteria. So if you find an article about Ronald Reagan and it was written a couple of days ago and it's timely, so that would be your news value, right? And then you're going to say, well, the article was written a week ago and it's talking about something that just recently happened, so that makes it timely, right? So that's all I need. So that's what I'm looking for this. Remember that these journal entries are only 5 points. You should not be writing me long paragraphs or long essays for these, okay? So just to make sure that you're aware of that. So the 1.04 assignment is an optional assignment. It is extra credit. You do not have to do this, but my philosophy is, if you found that first journal article pretty easy and you want to get a couple bonus points to pad your grade a little bit in case you don't do so well on a different assignment, I would highly recommend getting this extra credit, but it's totally up to you, okay? So what you're doing for this assignment is you are looking for a news story that's run in the past 5 months about our current president, which is Donald Trump, right? So you need to find a story that has at least 2 of the 5 news values. Okay, so 2 of the 5, right? Remember, any story about a president inherently has to remain, or has the remaining news values of prominence, so that news value is assumed in this assignment. Writing a sentence for each one, you can identify how much it meets the criteria, post your findings. So, what do you need? You need a link. You're always going to need a link in these. I need to be able to go to that entry or that article and kind of check and verify of what you're reading. But I need the link. Excuse me. I need a list of the news value, and I need a sentence, the same thing that we just did. So the only difference between this assignment and this one is that this has to do with the past president, this has to do with our current president, Donald Trump, right? So that's all you need to do. So the discussion assignment 1.05, this assignment is going to take place next week, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just giving you a preview of this assignment. So next week, you are going to start using the discussion board, and there will be a very specific video for directions on that discussion board. So please look at that. I'm just giving you a general overview of what to think about and how to get started on this. So I'll go to the discussion board. I'll show you how to post if you haven't used it before. I will give you all of the information that you need. So this is just a basic explanation for today, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to retrieve 2 articles that you read about the former and current president, okay? So the 2 articles that you would have done in 1.03 and 1.04. If you decide to not do 1.04, you're still in 1.05 going to need to find an article, okay? So you're going to need to find an article anyway. By comparing and contrasting your former president news with your current president news story, share with your classmates what you learned about the nature of news and how it has changed over time. Think about news and trends in journalism to inform your responses. So, things that you need to look about. So, basically, if you're looking at an article about Kennedy, Ford, Reagan, so those articles are in the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, right? So, they're articles from kind of not way back in history, but back in history. President Trump is obviously current. So those articles are definitely going to be written different. They're not going to be written the same way. So one of the things you're going to notice is language has probably changed. So has the language changed over time, right? So has it changed? Yes or no? Does the very definition of news or news values seem different? So what are they reporting on? Is it more trivial? Is it like hard-hitting news? Like what are the types of things they're reporting on? So does the very definition of what they're actually reporting on seem different to you? Does what passes for fact in the news story also seem different? So whatever they're talking about in the news story, so obviously they're talking about war, or they're talking about a political campaign, or they're talking about President Kennedy and his wife going on vacation somewhere. Whatever article you are discussing or that you're looking at, you need to look and see if the facts seem different in the story, right? What's passing for facts? Is it any different? Is the presentation different, such as the quality of the photographs or enhanced multimedia? Listen, that should be a definite yes, right? Because if something that's happening today in 2020 should be significantly different. We have technologically advanced greatly over the past 10, 20, 30 years, right? So you should definitely see a change here, right? So, what are each of the story's sources or attribution, and is there anything to know about the similarities and differences? Excuse me. So, basically, what this is saying is there anything in the story that you can really notice that's super similar or different, or the sources of the story, like what are you noticing about the sources, right? So these are very very simple. So has the language changed over time? So what you're going to do is you're going to copy and paste these questions, and then you're just going to answer them in the discussion board. So remember, the discussion board assignment is worth more points. So you are going to get more points for this assignment. So your writing should be a little bit more lengthy, okay? All right. So be sure to make be sure to make sure that you are referring back to the two articles you read to support your ideas. They should be very present in your discussion. I want to see facts back up your ideas. So while we're saying has language used in the news stories changed over time, yes, you're going to say yes, but then tell why. Does the definition of news value seem different? Yes or no? Why? Okay, so just remember there's always that why in there as well. All right, so as you're doing that, I'm going to pause for just 1 second. Okay, I wanted to pull up the rubric really quick so you would know. So one of the important things is in all discussion posts that you do, one of the things for you to receive full credit for the assignment is that you must respond to two of your peers by the deadline. So you need to make sure that you are responding to at least two classmates in the discussion board. So, and again, like I said, I will have a video that's going to show you how to do that, but that's just something that I wanted to make sure when explaining to you today what to expect, that you for sure knew that you also wanted to make sure that you are responding to at least two students on the discussion board. Okay, so then as we go over to pausing one more time, hold on real quick. All right, so I just wanted to make sure which one I had as extra credit and which one was required. So 105 is required, 108 is required, and then 109 is extra credit. So we talked about 105, so 108. So you are going to go to the news sites on News You Can Pursue or on news radio source such as NPR, major television, cable news websites such as ABC, NBC, etc., any of those. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to choose a story that is covered in two different mediums, and you're going to post the link into the journal. So using the criteria you have learned earlier in the unit, so basically you're going to have to make sure that you have read 1.07 and everything before that, right? So you are going to consider a news value that is emphasized or de-emphasized in the story you choose because of the medium's limitations or capabilities. So what it means by two different mediums is basically a newspaper article, like an actual hard copy newspaper. That's one medium. Twitter is a different medium. Facebook is a different medium. A book is a different medium. Television is a different medium. Radio is a different medium. So basically, a medium is referring to how it's delivered. So if it's delivered different, then it can be considered a different medium. So for this story, you are going to look at a story. You're going to choose a story that's covered by two different mediums. And then obviously you're going to post your link. So you're posting your link, right? And then you are going to write a very brief paragraph about the two stories, which identifies the news value that is emphasized. So is it proximity? Is it timeliness? What news values are emphasized or de-emphasized? Because of each medium's limitations or capabilities, includes a comparison of the two mediums and their strengths and weaknesses. So obviously, if you're looking at a newspaper versus a radio news story, huge differences between the two, right? Or if you're looking at a newspaper versus TV, lots of differences. So basically, what I'm looking for here is your comparison of the two and how they're similar or different. Okay, so 1.0 Nine is extra credit. So what you're going to do is you are going to have a paragraph describing all the visuals in the news story you watched on television. So you're going to have a paragraph imagining how you would tell the same story for a radio without the benefit of visual material, and then a paragraph exploring how to produce a piece for the ear as opposed to the eye and what that might change. So basically, you are going to get to pick a news story, any news story you want on TV. So that means you're going to have to sit down, watch the 6 o'clock news or the 11 o'clock news, and you're going to watch you can watch like a 2 minute little news story about something in your area, about President Trump, about something national, whatever you want to watch, right? So what you're going to do is you are going to have a very small paragraph describing everything you visually saw in the story. So you could talk about the pictures that you saw. You could talk about if there was video brought in. You could talk about the news reporter, and their expression on their face, what they were wearing, whatever you want to do, right? So then you're going to have another very small paragraph imagining or kind of describing how would you do that same story for the radio? Like, what would you have to do, right? So you're going to do a little brief paragraph on that. And then you're going to have another very brief little paragraph exploring how producing a piece for the radio or for ear or like also a podcast even, to I might change which news values or facts would be emphasized or de-emphasized. So basically, you're just going to tell me, well, what am I going to have to change it to make it to radio? Or what am I going to have to lessen or make or add more of or whatever? So remember, this is extra credit. So it's not required, but remember, padding that grade a little bit is going to help you, and it would be a really nice thing to do, right? So with that, you had 1.03, so 1.02 was the quiz due, right? 1.03 required due this week. 1.04 extra credit. Those were all week one, all due by Friday. 1.05 is the first assignment for week two. So that's going to be next week starting on the 27th, right? So then on top of that, you had a discussion board assignment, right? So the discussion board assignment, oh, sorry, I missed. Then you have 1.05 journal, right? So these two journals sorry, this journal and this discussion are required, okay? This journal is also required. This week will be one of the only weeks where you will have 3 assignments due, okay? The rest of the assignments will be pared down to mostly 2 a week and then some extra credit opportunity for you, okay? So next week you have 2 journal entries and you have a discussion assignment. The journal entries, remember, are only worth 5 points. The discussion assignment is going to be worth 20 points, okay? On top of that, you have an extra credit opportunity for 1.09 if you would choose to do it, okay? So hopefully that clarifies a lot of things for you. Again, the discussion board assignment, there will be video added to that next week, so you will be able to see exactly what you need to do. There is a lot of information for next week, so make sure that you're reading everything. I know that I covered a lot. However, we're only at 30 minutes, so you don't have to stay for the full 40 minutes. So that's a good thing. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.